Hi, in this video we get some bits done, the seats and extra bits I've created, sorted out, as you'll see, and I make up the wing jig for the cabane struts. That's all gone very smoothly, or relatively smoothly I should say, but you will also see that I've run into one or two issues which are going to delay me a little bit as I await bits of metal and things to do yet more algae modifications, but nothing particularly major. So let's see what I get up to. Come on now. Well, here's a little bit of something which I'll show you what it is later. I'm just painting it up at the moment. I'm just going to go over to this is the lumbar support. I'm going to just back drill through these holes, so I've got something to act as a guide. So I'm just going to back drill through these with a 3mm drill, and then wherever they come out on the top face here, later in the drill press I can actually drill down for the heads of the screws. But you'll see from the setup now I've actually trimmed these edges so that there's just a slight amount of compression I need to put on here, so there's a bit of force just holding those edges down so that it's got just a nice edge, bit of edge pressure on there when it's mounted to the bulkhead. So we'll get that sort of positioned, and we'll crack on a little bit further in a mo. And then there's these little bits which I've made up. These I just used a hole saw on the pillar drill, but took the guide drill bit out of the middle, so I've got those discs. Those I'll drill with a 3mm hole in the middle, and they'll be the things to go onto the back of the bulkhead, and then the little thread inserts, brass thread inserts, will go through the bulkhead and into that, so it's got a bit of meat and spreads the load a little bit. So there it is. All I did was I drilled the top hole. Around here, I drilled the top hole here through, put the screw in and put a nut on the back, did the lower one, that held it all in place. Because I drilled through these holes, they just act as a guide. So yeah, that's it in its sort of position. You can sort of see I will have to bore out just big enough for the head to be sunk in, and work out exactly what length cap head screws I want. So it is cap heads that I'm after. Sort of like that, those little fellows. So the tool I'm using to counterbore the holes into the seat lumbar support, like that, is this. These are end mills. These are designed to be able to be plunged into a piece of metal. I've set the depth there so it'll only cut in to the right depth. I just set the hole where I want it and run it down through. Nothing particularly spectacular, but that's a tool that makes a lovely flat base to the hole, and makes a very clean cut on the wood as well, so that the cap screws will fit in nicely. So with all the inserts in, I drew the outline around the outside where the lumbar support should go, and there I've marked out a 5-inch hole, which is enough for me to get my arm in, to be able to do the rear spar carry through bolts for the rear spar, and to get to the reversing lever, be able to get in and do a little bit of work on the trim plunges if I need to. I'll also have the other access actually going through the lower fabric covering to be able to get to the other side of the bolt, so it allows, you know, the bolts to be tightened up and access to be able to get to doing some of the servicing stuff. So what I've done is I've used a hole cutter, a standard sort of tank cutter, to cut through there to get rid of the worst of the wood, taking them out. I always, where possible, try to cut the plywood. You've got the hole in the centre where the pilot drill is on the hole cutter. I drill through part way through plywood, and then because that pilot drill's out the other side, I then come back through the other way. So I've cut it two ways. That way it's less chance of having the veneer fray up and split away. It's just a method which I've adopted from boat building training back in the day. That was what I was taught. Just made doing the holes that much easier when you're using a tank cutter. So there's a little tip for you, it might help you at some stage. So there's the hole opened up a bit there with the just using a Dremel with a sanding drum on it. A couple of little places just needs to be smoothed. That last little bit, it's not absolutely perfect, but it's pretty damn close. And that allows, it says it allows your hand to go through and access things, or and put tools in and out. So not too shabby. I think it will do the trip, and that'll be, it doesn't take out much out of the rigidity of the back here, and that will be actually replaced by having the lumbar support screwed to it. Okay, rear lumbar supports and the other bit currently got their first full sort of coats of paint on, and just going in just to clean up the holes a little bit. I use these, I think the Americans call these sort of Q-tips. There's a fresh one. Cotton buds, whatever you like to call these. These are just ideal to get inside the holes there, for doing the painting and for taking out the excess paint that's got in there. So we've got not a lot. I'm just going to let this dry. It's going to take a bit of time. I want it to dry absolutely fully. I'll sand it, and then I'll give it its second full coat of paint, and hopefully we end up with a relatively smooth. It'll have a slight texture to it because it's being applied by a roller, but a smooth without seeing all the wood grain in it. That's the plan anyway. So there's the seat lumbar support in position, and there's the other bit on the other side there. That will be held in on the aircraft later by Velcro, and that's just going to make a pocket between in here and the inner plywood, well, the plywood skin that goes onto the side of the fuselage, and that's going to be my my little chart pocket to put charts and checklists and things like that in. So just by doing it now, sort of thinking ahead, I managed to sort of trace around the wood and everything else to get it to fit in there. As I said, it's just going to be held on with Velcro to allow me to be able to peel it off should I drop something in there and need to try and get it out at some stage later, because you get all sorts of detritus to collect in it. So just to make it easy to get into there to be able to sort that out. Okay, I'm going to start making up the jig section, which goes to get all the cabane struts sorted out and into their relevant positions. This is quite a serious sort of jig, and here it gives us the width of approximately 22 inches. Well, it is very approximate because even according to the plans, the fuselage width is meant to be 24 1/4. So we've got that slight discrepancy. Right, taking the fact that for me my engine's 160 pounds, and it gives us the sort of variations on how far back this position is here for the front one should be. Going between that 170 to 150 pounds makes it the 13 3/4 inches. But then, because I've moved my firewall back 2 1/4 inches and it's got a skew on it, I've done the adjustments in the measurements there, which brings my point here, so 11 and a bit inches back from the firewall. And the width at that point there is not the full width of 24 inches. It wouldn't be anywhere, any of these readings here, it wouldn't be that width. For me it's down to 21 and 1/16 for the front one, and we've still got the 24 1/4 for the rear one, so I'm going to mark those bits out. It gives us this 21 inches going to there, and then another inch on top, so it needs to be 22 inches top to bottom. Doesn't give us any dimensions for these holes. I'm using some 1132 plywood, 9mm thereabouts, plywood to make up these two end frames, and I will adjust the length of this dimension here. I've drawn on the shapes onto the wood, centre line. This ply, tell it's not aircraft grade ply. Got the sort of filler sections in where obviously had cracks and splits, and it's not perfect, but it does for making up the jig. It's better than using MDF. Set up with a line marked in accordance with the drawing, and we've got the extra inch, and the width doesn't tell us what the width should be on the drawing or anything like that, so I've just set that up to being the width of the supplied metal sections, which would go into that somehow, something a bit like that. I'll measure the distance between these holes, half it, and then set that up either side once I've done the cutout, so that these can be bolted into position, or held in position. So here's the first one sort of cut out. You may just be able to see that I've left meat on here and here on the plywood, and I'm going to actually sand that back to the lines at each end to make sure this is absolutely vertical. They're the critical points, there, and this centre line. The bits in between here could be as wavy as you like. The bits on the outside here could be as wavy as you like. They're not critical. Well, I offered up the thicknesses of ply to the relevant places on the top wing, along with that metal plate. I want that metal plate central on the rear spar carry through, so that would take the back face of it to there, and I want the front upright J10 of the jig to be centered on here. So going by that and subtracting the thickness of the half the thickness of the ply from there, and measuring from there to there, came out at 19 inches. So J12, the piece that sort of links the two upright bits together, is 19 inches. That's for my aircraft with a thickness of ply which I'm using for the for my jigs. That's what it works out at, which is completely different to what it's got here. It's got 18 1/4 inches. I can't see how 18 1/4 inches would work when you look at the wing and the wing spar setup. So there's the jig made up in its complete format. You sort of see, sort of screwed together, so I can unscrew it as needed. Going into the blocks here, which make it a little bit stronger than just going into the edge of plywood. Coming over to here, I've taken out the control column and bits. I'm going to take out the mistake up here and cut that out of position. Well, it's not pretty, but I managed to get rid of the piece of wood that was going across there that I shouldn't have put in because it goes up higher. There's a bit of a mark in a couple of places where I was using a reciprocating saw and it's just cut into the top lamination of the plywood there. But I don't think that's a huge issue. Managed to chisel most of it off as well. Yeah, it's smooth. So when the engine backing plate is on, I'll see how high that engine backing plate goes to, and if there is anything that's still sort of showing there between there and the beam that is meant to go there slightly higher up, I'll put a veneer of 32nd ply across just to make sure it's got all the strength it should have. So as you know, I was planning up doing the strut section jig, so I've got all the bits out for the struts, and these AS1 brackets here, it says a 1/4 inch hole, and yeah, it's made out of inch, and we need 1, 2, so that's 4 at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, double it, 6 at the top, 10 of them, and Fisher have kindly created 10 exactly according to the drawing there. But unfortunately the drawing here is wrong. 4 of them need to have a 1/4 inch hole because they mount through the fuselage with a single bolt, which is a AN4. The others mount up here, are held in place by AN3 bolts, and as such that 1/4 inch hole, that's a 1/4 inch bolt, when we chamfer it off here, would be too big, or rather the edge distance here would be too small. We could drill the holes through the plate here 1/4, but that would make the edge distance too small when you cut the chamfer there, which is required for the wing mounting plates to be able to go in. It's a bit of a shame. I've spoken to Dave Hertner, and my suggestion was that if these hadn't been finish hole drilled, they would have been okay. I could have, if they'd only been drilled to 1/8 or something like that, I could have drilled them out to the 3/16, and that would have been no problem, no issue at all. So my suggestion is, or has been to him, is that all the metal components don't drill to finish size. Leave them pilot drilled if necessary, and then the builder can go up to the right size. Okay, so I've got a solution for my problem here. I'm going to use this piece of metal here, which is the undercarriage U-channel, that piece there, and I've ordered a replacement piece of this. Okay, so setting up for where the holes go for these brackets here, the plans have it as 22.5, but then they have the firewall square and not set back the same as it is on my aircraft. So I've done the calculations to that. I'm going to add the 2.5 inches, so that'll be 22 3/4 and 22 5/8, measured from the front of the firewall. And if it's correct, then the rear hole here should be, it says, looking at the other plans, there we go, pretty much directly on the centre line of that upright. So that'll be my sanity check. If that hole is right on that that centre line, that'll be absolutely fantastic. Okay, so there's my line. There's the line, and it's pretty much bang on the centre. And the two lines are 2.5 inches apart. Okay, so I've drawn the centre line along here. That's where the top line of the bolt here would need to be, no matter what angle it sort of sits at, sort of like that. And this line here, as you can sort of tell, really is where the lower bolt would have to be, no matter what angle this is sort of sitting at. Looking at these mounts here, drew those lines, just trying to work out the height it should be for the holes. I'm going to go down about halfway through this block here. I think that's a sane place to go, about where it is on the drawings. But with it like that, it's going to interfere slightly with this gusset here. I don't want to go further forward because that starts to affect the triangulation going up by a bit. So just take out a little bit of this this gusset here. Will make very little difference. I can't go lower or low enough to get past that gusset completely on the ground, so I run out of material on the lower face. Nothing on the drawing to the exact height, so I'm going down here halfway on this block. Okay, you know me, I like to double check and recheck things. So that spot there on the thing is the sort of minimum edge distancing in for the wing mounting bolts to go. So gives you an idea. And there's a line which would show the lower edge of the mounting strap. And then so here the bolt hole would go. We'd have to cut the corner. Well, that's all shown on the plan to a degree, but when you actually look at where that would have to cut into, it would sort of have to come across there, and then be sort of radiused up to allow for the end of that tank, and that's if it was absolutely right on the minimums, which we're not sure it would be. If we look at the distance from there to there, we have insufficient edge distance, so that doesn't work. Arg! Okay, and then looking at the other sort of side of life, if we with it sort of at that angle, which is roughly the angle it would be on, you know, fitted going by the wing jig and bits and pieces, and we drew our sort of lines across the bottom of our plate there, and then we put in our edge distance, minimum edge distance, standard edge distance there. We would end up with well, we've got all this lot sticking out the bottom, but these two holes here are relatively close together, and there is a slight issue with that, because it's those extra holes which have to be drilled which stops this little lot from, when it's sort of held together, from racking from side to side. That's the bit that stops this whole plate from moving like that from side to side, is that sort of distancing there. So ideally I'd like to have about ½ inch extra going out the bottom here. That would give me a much better separation there, actually slightly more than ½ inch because of the angles and things like that, to have the to maintain the edge distance, which would be good. We'd end up with a much better, more rigid setup. So that ½ inch out the bottom would be nice, and to get around this sort of issue here and only have to take off the very top corner and maintain the edge distance, an extra ½ inch at the top would be quite good. So rather than it being the 2.5 inch width that it is at the moment, I'm thinking of going to 3.5 inches. Now, am I alone in this little lot? Have I, is this, because there's no drawing of this component. I've not been supplied with any drawing of what this component should be like. This is what's supplied by the kit. So I had a little look at the sort of bits which have been done before. This is in the instructions, sort of supplement to the instructions bit supplied by Fisher. And if you look there, there's the bracket, and if you look at the bottom edge of that bracket there, it's level with the bottom of the his metalwork. And if you look at the top end here, well, there's a hole drilled for his wing bolt going through. That's sort of central with that slot, and that hasn't, from what I can see, hasn't trimmed the corner off even on his bracketry, so he obviously added that extra distance. Okay, so thinking about this section here, same, that's the top view of it. My wing jig, this thing here which I made up, I've used 9mm ply. My idea was that it says here ½ inch, and I needed to be narrower to fit between. I want to have a greater clearances in there to put my tapered washers in. But having thought about it, plate there's 1/4 inch, plate there's 1/4 inch, and it's talking about having ½ inch long spaces between. That would mean that it would be 1 inch from the front face to the rear face, inch from there to there. Problem: the main spar is just 7/8 of an inch front to back. That means that these two plates here, I've just got 7/8 of an inch gap between them, and you're trying to get it to force over at something that's 1 inch wide. Ooh, no, not good. So I'm going to use a 6mm plate in there. That way this little lot together will be 18.5mm, which will allow for the fact that the current width of the setup is about 22mm. That gives me just a little bit to allow for that slope, and I can put in some tapered washers or packers in there. Well, that's it for the year and for this week's video for the build. The statistics for you, for those who'd like to know a little bit. Up to this point in time, 470 hours of build time has been put into the aircraft. Out of that 470 hours, over 140 hours have been my modifications, and that's both sets of times, not including planning time or any of the sort of tool jig building time and things like that. It's purely been the construction time on the aircraft. So like the wing jig section built today, this video, that I haven't included the time to actually build the jig, so you can probably add another 20 or so hours, I suppose, to for jigs and things like that. But hopefully we'll get on to a little bit more work in the next week or so, and I hope this hasn't come across as a whinge and a moan about Fisher's plans and things. It's not intended as such. Dave Hurtner at Fisher has been very supportive. I've had no issues really when I've been asking questions there. A lot of the stuff is down to the fact that the plans were drawn up some time ago, probably after the aircraft was originally built, the first prototype, and things have changed, modifications have happened, and the plans aren't as good as they should be. There's no if, buts or maybes. They aren't as good as they should be or could be. but people have successfully built aircraft from them. It does make it a little bit harder for those who are doing it for the first time, and hopefully these videos, which you know, Dave is really happy that I've been producing, help you find out the issues and what you should be looking for, and it's acting as a guide for Fisher themselves to be able to modify and update their instructions and plans going forward. Although at this moment in time they're snowed under with that new jet fighter looking type aircraft, which yeah, they're having to redesign bits and pieces to cope with a different engine and power plant. So yeah, they've got an awful lot on, and they're not a big company, so hey ho, yeah, they'll do their best. So hopefully have a good new year, and I'll catch you then. Bye. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up. You can subscribe or even hit the little bell notification for future videos. Any comments would be appreciated, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, go fly and feel the sky.